Welcome to Thriving Rockstar with Alex Drake, and today's guest is Benjamin Hardy. How are you, Ben?
Doing awesome, man. Glad you're enjoying that mud water. Glad we're both on the same page.
Oh yeah, yeah. We were just talking about some mud water and bulletproof mud water, for that matter.
Awesome,
Are you
man.
caffeinated?
Very slightly, but
Very,
yeah.
very slightly. Tea or what?
Um, it was like a little bit of a pre-workout supplement of sorts.
Oh, you know what? I mean, like, I'm interested. What is that? Like,
Oh gosh, do you want me to go grab it and read it?
you can just tell me.
I don't know. It's something called like precision. I don't take a full serving because right now I don't even go to the gym. But
Right.
yeah, it's like a really clean pre-workout with like beta alanine and like just a few things, and it's got some caffeine. I think I took like 100 milligrams of caffeine.
Okay, so you already had a workout in the morning.
I already had what?
You already had a workout, or you just took a
A
pre?
little bit. I know
Mhm.
I did like push-ups and stuff. I did push-ups and jump ropes.
That's good. That's good. Get a little cardio, a little anaerobic. So you got it all in. So you just wrote this book, Personality Isn't Permanent, and I had the chance to read it, before it comes out, and I appreciate that. It's really, I just chewed through the whole book, as I was saying before we started, like, and it's just there's so much gold there, right? And I could totally relate because my first foray into self development books was What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter, right? And that book really told me about affirmations and how I can just kind of change my programming, that I'm not who I ended up being, that I can sort of take off from where my parents left off and sort of parent myself onward, and and then just set my life up in all the different aspects and different areas of my life. So
That's good stuff.
yeah, no, it's great. So what led you to write this book?
Whew. Well, I started writing it in the summer of 2018, so it took me about a year and a half. I finished writing it in about January, so I've been done with it for about 4 months, and it was a really refining process. But yeah, there's a lot of things that ultimately led me to writing this book. One was my PhD in psychology. Obviously, like personality is probably the most central subject in psychology. Makes sense. um,
Hmm.
and obviously, there's a concept called psychometrics, which is basically test development and validation. And all of my professors over and over told me about, kind of the trendy personality tests, Myers-Briggs, and just explaining why they were not good science and explaining why they shouldn't be taken seriously, but they're so big in pop culture and about how. So that was interesting. But the thing that really shoved me over the edge was reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Not sure if you've heard of that one or read that one.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's a really dense book. It's probably considered the definitive book, or at least like the authoritative book on trauma at the moment.
Mm.
And so I read that book, and Bessel van der Kolk, who's been studying trauma for decades, talked a lot about how trauma freezes your personality in the past, and keeps you stuck in repetitive cycles. Trauma shatters your flexibility and imagination as a human being. And so obviously trauma leads you to being emotionally rigid, which stops you from learning and trying things and kind of boxes you in. And so I just thought, this is so interesting. And I've never really seen someone actually take on this subject in a meaningful way
Mm-hmm.
in the self-help space. So there's a lot of different books, but I just thought, this is a hard topic. I'm going to go for it. And I just thought that the trauma really opened me up, as far as looking into it more.
Yeah, no, you really like you broke that down a lot, and how, just reframing your past. And that I just found that just a very helpful thing. These are, a lot of the concepts I found in your book. There were some of them were a complete fresh take on things, right? And then some of them were, concepts that I've just known intuitively and have read elsewhere, and so yeah, it's definitely it moves the field forward. That I could say that much for sure. Um, and that your past, like, one of the things you had in there is like the past happens for you and not to you.
Yeah,
So
man.
that's something that I've really I agree with, because that, like you said, with the trauma, people kind of get stuck with that and defining themselves. One of the stories you told in the book was I think a relative of yours, right, who was told by an art teacher that she couldn't draw, right? And and sort of like kind of defined herself by that and stopped herself from ever pursuing that as a career.
Yeah, that's kind of that's a big thing with traumas, is that it's not always huge events. I mean, in this case, this was someone who I know well. She's in her 80s now, but she had a private art class, and and the art teacher corrected her thing, and it was in front of the other kid. They weren't kids, the other adults in the private art class, and she was so embarrassed by having to be corrected in public that she formed a narrative in her mind that she's not good at drawing, and so she just never pursued that dream. That's the essence of trauma, is that you internalize something. You have obviously an emotional reaction, and then you don't reframe it. You don't get encouragement. You don't get support, and so you end up getting stuck. You hit some random glass ceiling and create a fixed mindset, and so you stop going. And I think, as a musician or as an artist, there's so many glass ceilings between you, like so many levels between you and like excellence, right? And there's not. Why do we hit certain levels? It's because we have some experience, and then we have, we internalize the emotions, and it's not until we get the encouragement to keep going forward.
No, definitely, definitely. It's something important to just kind of to break out of, and to to be led by like one other thing you mentioned in the book is being led by a purpose rather than the past, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the essence of psychology, is that most people think that the personality comes from the past. And I think if someone isn't being driven by a purpose, like a goal that's really driving them, then their past actually is the thing driving them, whether it be trauma or their former experiences or their current environment and peer group, or their current story in their head. This is who I am.
Right.
If you're not driven by a really specific, future self version of yourself and a purpose, then the past is the thing that's dictating who you're being today. Which I don't really want that. I'd rather my future self be the thing that's guiding my actions, so you're being courageous, trying things you've never done before. I mean, if you're an artist, in order to live your dreams and even just to experience excellence, I think you saw the section in the book about deliberate practice, but deliberate practice is essentially, what's required to develop mastery. And you can't, you can play the guitar as an example for 10,000 hours, as far as the 10,000 hour rule. You could play the guitar for 10,000 hours and not get that much better, right?
I've taught people who've done it.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts, so it's not really the 10,000 hour rule. It's actually deliberate practice, which is like very focused, deliberate, purposeful learning towards a future self. You can't actually become a master without having a vision and then having that vision shape your process.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's, the future should be the thing guiding who you are. I mean, that's one of the core kind of concepts of the book, is that most people, because they've, formed this huge identity of themselves, they set goals to confirm their current personality rather than, setting goals to shape their personality.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the better, more powerful approach. And I think it's the healthier approach.
Right. Like what I just visualized, like, like a tree kind of grows from roots in the ground and grows upward, but we can set our roots in the sky and grow toward those, like the idea is like, you don't have to be constantly at a tug of war with your past.
Exactly. I actually have it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Andy.
Well, I was saying, I've got this friend. His name's Dan Sullivan. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dan Sullivan.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually have a book coming out together in October. It's a different book.
Awesome.
That book, yeah, you might like that. But Dan's gone through so much, let's just say, trauma work, that he says he essentially has no past. And when he's saying he has no past, obviously he has memories. But basically what he means is
smoked a lot of weed.
No. What he means is that he's got no hooks.
Right.
And what it means by hooks is, but because the past should be information, it should not be emotion.
Right.
Unless it's chosen positive emotions. But when you have hooks in the past, basically what it means is that certain experiences hook you back. They trigger you and pull you back to the past, where you're stuck in the emotions of the past, and then you're brought back, and then that can take you through unhealthy cycles. And so he essentially just means he's got no hooks in his past, so he can move forward, as a flexible, very confident human being and pursue massive goals. And he's not going to get hooked by his past, and basically hit all these glass ceilings. Instead, he can actually just flexibly move towards the future. And I've seen that in him. He's totally egoless. You know what I mean? Like he is he just moves forward, and he's totally fine looking stupid, making mistakes, not knowing the answers, and he's just ambitious, and when you're around someone like that, where they're not so limited in their head by whatever is happening in their past, whether that's trauma or failures or trying to look cool, it really allows for rapid learning.
Right. Yeah, no, that's one thing that I mean, it all kind of connects to the idea of just not letting your past drive your future, in a negative way. I mean, it could be in a positive way, right?
Yeah,
You could have some
if
kind
it's
of
happening for you.
if it's happening for you, but we need to kind of like take a microscope to our past and see if anything is like holding us back there. You know, and there are people on this planet who are making amazing changes and who are driving innovation, like like Elon Musk and guys like that, that kind of make you think like, wow, there are people functioning on that kind of level, and I'm playing this small game over here. So it's like, how are they different? How are they thinking different? How are they making these huge leaps, right? And
Yeah.
they're just such a purpose, such a goal driven, reality, instead of being sort of driven by this particular thing in the past. And artists that I speak to and that I've worked with have like this kind of cling to the past, and they feel like they need to, they're often stuck because they feel like that narrative is who they are and what they write, and all
Oh
that.
gosh, yeah. I mean, I've seen that. I mean, even as a writer,
Hmm.
um, yeah. I mean, you can really get caught in nostalgia or just caught in an identity, where you just overly describe yourself a certain way, and
Hmm.
and so like you only make this kind of music, or like like you just really box yourself into an identity, and then everything you do is to confirm that identity,
Hmm.
and obviously in the book I talk about all the new research. So just for all listeners, there's a really good TED Talk that just is a really quick, primer, but it's by Daniel Gilbert, and he's a Harvard psychologist, and the TED Talk's called The Psychology of Your Future Self. I don't know if you came across that one yet, but it's like a 6-minute TED Talk. But basically, at this point where the research on identity is this. If you think about who you were 5, 10 years ago, you're probably not the exact same person. I mean, do you think
Right.
you're the exact same person you were 10 years ago?
No, definitely not.
I don't think your listeners are either. And like, the idea is if you're not the exact same person you were in the past, you don't see the world the same way. You've got different goals, different priorities, different perspectives, different habits. There's no reason to think that you're going to be the exact same person in the future. Your future self is going to be a different person than you are today. And actually, from a decision making standpoint, it's a lot better to consider them a different person, that they're not the same person as you are. And maybe you should make decisions based on their preferences or their goals or what they want rather than what you want today. That's actually the only way you can live intentionally. You can't actually make quality decisions today if you don't know who you want to be in the future. Because if you
Hmm.
don't know who you want to be in the future, think about it. It really does not matter what you do today.
Right.
Also, if you don't know who you want to be in the future, then you can't actually create a deliberate practice process. You can't shape a process where you actually become who you want to be. Instead, you're just kind of randomly evolving based on like events in the environment. You know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right. Right.
yeah. So I mean, it's exciting, but why this is so cool is that if your future self is different than you, then you don't have to hold your current self so tight. You don't have to overly define your current self and say, this is absolutely who I am. Instead, it's like your future self actually matters a lot more than who you are today. Who you are today is, it's a snapshot, it's a slice, but it's
Hmm.
always evolving and changing. And so you might as well be purposeful about that change and direct it.
Right. And one thing you mentioned in the book, which is great, is don't be the form or anything, right? And
That's
so
a big concept, right?
even if you achieved something wildly amazing, right, that can in a way be another like anchor that can hold you back to achieving things in the future, just like you mentioned with what was it, Buzz Aldrin, right?
Yeah.
It's wild, for those who don't know, he kind of broke down after he came back, and a- a- and like lost like decades, right? So um
Yeah, success can be a huge trap, because if you've
mhm.
been so successful, then you have this persona or this identity or this status that you really want to maintain, and it becomes your story, like, and I think we've all been around people like that who they keep telling stories of their successful past. It's like, well, yeah, but who are you today, and
Right.
what are your goals, like, what are you up to? Like, we get the, and it's actually really great to let things go. Like just as an example, for 3 years or more, I was the #1 guy on medium.com as far as like the writing platform. And I was just dominating that platform. But there comes a point, like there's that whole quote, what got you here won't get you there. Like at a certain point, you can either keep doing what you're doing because it works, or you can be honest about your next future self, the next stage of your growth. And if you want to go to that next level, usually you've got to let go of the current strategy because the new future self has a new strategy. The goal shapes the process, but people get obsessed with a certain process.
Mm-hmm.
And so they feel like this need to stay that person. And so they don't go back to creative mode. They don't go back to courage mode. And I think I've seen this a lot. I've seen musicians and I've seen writers where like their former work was so good.
Mm-hmm.
But then they stopped having a vision and they kind of just like kept churning out stuff that was less and less creative. I don't know if I'm sure you've seen that with artists, like,
Oh yeah.
where their first few albums or something like that was just super interesting, and then over time it just stopped being interesting.
Yeah. No, it's a tough thing because they could become caricatures of themselves, where at first they were influenced by all the potential and all like the other artists and all of that, and then they go inspired, and then they're trying to be their former selves, especially if they were successful.
Oh, yeah,
And
they're trying to like recreate the past.
right, and it's dismal instead of looking forward and just evolving. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
What's
that
crazy is
mhm.
this, man. Think about how much different your life looks if you're actually going through a process of becoming a future version of yourself. Like your daily life looks different if you're in a creative process. Like if you're actually exercising courage, living intentionally, if you're actually versus if you're not doing that, like if you're not actually directly pursuing something, which is taking intention and courage and challenges and growth, like your life looks totally different if you're not doing that. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's like, I think you're a little bit more dull and apathetic if you're not purposefully pursuing something.
You could almost see it in the person's eyes, that you could just see that distance. They become numb.
Dude. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Love it, man.
Yeah, there's like a level of just in their gaze, right?
Well, you're being subconscious. I mean,
Hmm.
essentially what you do, because subconscious is you on autopilot. It's you without even trying. And so,
Hmm.
like, obviously, we could all just be ourselves today and just kind of be in a rhythm and routine. Obviously, to act towards a future self is the opposite of that. You're actually like trying and working and dealing with uncertainty and all sorts of stuff versus just, really the most easy way to explain personality is it's your comfort zone.
Mm.
Like that's the two words are synonyms, honestly. And so, like, it's really easy just to stay in your box, and that box can get smaller and smaller. And as people age, that's usually what happens. They become less open to new experiences, less open to new influences, less open to new, peer groups. Like they stop doing things for the first time. They stop failing and experimenting. And so it's just, their comfort zone becomes increasingly small and predictive of who they are. So it's a challenge. But yeah, being on autopilot, as far as just living subconsciously every day, essentially what you're doing is you're living to the roles in the environment that you've already created. You're just living up to the expectations of those around you. And you've stopped creating future versions of yourself that you're pursuing and seeking. And I think that's when you've stopped learning and growing.
Yeah, it's important to just be on this upper, just constantly growing. And that's not to say that you can't have relaxing evenings.
All the time. You can all the time, just as long as your life in general is a creative process.
Right, right. And one thing that you mentioned getting up early as a way to sort of be productive. Like most, like future happens. I forgot exactly how you worded it, but prior to 8 a.m. that you do this like productive work. You kind of set yourself up from the early part of the day. People lose that part of the day oftentimes, and they sort of sleep until an important commitment.
Yeah, I mean, usually that's what happens. So that, there's the whole concept of urgent versus important
Hmm.
activities, and I think most people's lives are driven by what's urgent. If they've got to get to the work or if they've got to pay the bills, like essentially just all the things that require urgency. But the things that are important, such as like fitness or like creating something, creating that new album, like or whatever it is, those things that aren't urgent but are super important to you often get pushed off. And so unless you give yourself space to do those, those things never happen. Decades can go by and
Mm-hmm.
you've never really done the important things first.
Right.
And so from my perspective, it's important to do the important things before the urgent. You do the
Mm-hmm.
things that really matter, whether that's like visualizing, journaling, creating, for me, writing. Like if I haven't done that, just as an example, like we have 5 kids and we adopted 3 of them from the foster system, which was pretty interesting. But our 12-year-old son, they're all being homeschooled right now because of the quarantine, although our 12-year-old son was being homeschooled anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got various activities that they've got to do for their school. And obviously there's some things that they like doing better than others. And like my 12-year-old, he'll often push off the worst thing to the end, and like his whole day sucks because he's procrastinating the thing that he really needs to do. And
Right.
there's that whole quote, do the worst first. If you
Right.
do the work, as a creator, usually the worst first is you doing your creative work because we have such a fear of creating or whatnot, or it's just,
Mm.
but I told him like, your whole day sucks because you're procrastinating the thing you need to do most. And so it's this thing on your mind and you're just trying to get out of it. It's like, if you do that thing first, you'll never have to think about it again for the rest of the day, and your whole day will feel great because you've done this hard thing first. And I think that's kind of the key to doing important stuff first, is if you do that stuff before everything else, then you've already felt like today's a success. Like today's already a win if nothing else happens.
Mm-hmm. It's eating
Whereas
that
if you
frog.
didn't do it, yeah, you got to eat the frog, dude. Like if you don't eat the frog, dude, every day, your life's not advancing, and it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
It's freaking hard, but it can become a habit. And if it becomes a habit, then your life starts to change, like monumentally. Whereas like the people you went to high school with, like you see an increasing gap between like your life and theirs because you've been eating the frog every day, whereas they're just living on urgent mode where they're being reactive to situations in life.
Right. Right. And that that regular sort of putting in the work on a daily basis, will really accumulate. Like the other Hardy, Darren Hardy, in his book
The compound effect, right?
Compound Effect, yeah, talks about just that how that affects people over time. That you end up in a very different place than someone who hasn't been doing that. And just these little habits really build up. And one thing that willpower is we have a limited amount of that every day, right? And if we have too much decision fatigue throughout the day from not quite knowing what we want to do, and like not using our time effectively and efficiently, we end up just running out of that willpower and then just having no juice left, and then doing things that we are just against our values.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, essentially, it's the end of the day stuff, where you just
Yeah.
you kill yourself, essentially, like you binge out on whatever. I
Hmm.
mean, really, when you're out of willpower, you just make stupid decisions. That's the
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
And so you want to shield yourself from that, and eliminate most of the options and distractions because they're wasteful. So you don't have to think about it. I mean, the key is so that you want your mind to be focused on the things that matter. You don't
Hmm.
want to fill it with trash. You know what I
Right.
mean? And you don't want to like have to be weighing situations that are not worth your time anyways.
Right.
And so it's better just to eliminate most of the options and just make the decisions that matter, so you don't have to deal with decision fatigue.
Right. I mean, like most of these super high performing people have a very simple wardrobe, and they don't make the decisions of wearing this or that. They just kind of, they'll have the Steve
it,
Jobs like wardrobe, just like
why think
this.
about that?
Yeah.
Why worry about such a thing, right?
Right. 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 It's just like very, like you get the decision out of it. People don't realize also how like looking at your phone in bed when you wake up and just going through a Facebook feed or something like that can really kill you in the morning. Really, just zap all of that. That because in a way that also uses that same resource.
Oh yeah, I mean, but when you wake up and if you like your brain's in an amazing creative state when you first wake up because your brain's actually like operating a little slower because it hasn't had all this information come in yet. And so like the morning is probably such an amazing I mean for me it's an amazing time to go and journal, visualize, reflect and then begin writing. But the moment I start watching YouTube videos or reading my email, like you can feel your brain speed up because you're throwing information in and all of a sudden your brain starts processing and it mixes the pot. And it's like, and so you don't want to do that first thing in the morning because immediately you're being reactive to your environment. Immediately you're throwing yourself if the problem with the internet is it's like a casino, like you're wandering in different directions, you don't know where it's taking you,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially being reactive to an environment that's guiding you places rather than dictating proactively where you want to go. And so when you open your phone and you're just scanning through, you're literally being reactive to whatever's in that environment. It's like, oh, I'll look at that email, or oh, I'll click that link. It's like you're literally setting yourself up to operate subconsciously the whole day, which is the opposite of eating the frog. It's the opposite of working towards a future self, building confidence and flexibility. And so instead, you're shrinking as a human being, and your comfort zone shrinking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important thing to take control of. One of the things you mentioned, which is pretty fresh in the book, is like before setting your big goals and to have a bunch of experiences and to push yourself and to stretch your boundaries and read a ton of books. And yeah, I think it's very important because like, when I talk to some friends of mine, who I'm like, oh, what are your goals or whatever, that they're thinking from a very small little circle of exposure to different experiences and you know so yeah, what would you say on that? How would you
Are you talking about the section about just reading a lot of books?
yeah, just reading a lot of books and just having experiences that push
Oh,
you.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically the idea is that we're all shaped by the goals we're currently pursuing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people are not very clear on their goals, but they have goals, even if the goal is just to fit in with their friends. Like society gives you goals until you create your own.
Right.
Um, but your goals are based on, what you're exposed to, what you want, and what your confidence level is. And I think that that's the key is that you need to expose yourself to more and better things so that then you can be aware. Like I love reading biographies, honestly, because I'm totally shocked by certain people's lives. And like I just recently read a Beatles biography.
Oh,
Actually,
nice.
interesting. Yeah, I just read a Beatles biography like literally last week. I'm now reading an interesting biography about Abraham Lincoln and his depression, and about how his depression led him to, uh, you know, overcoming his own obstacles. But when you read these kind of things, first off, it just educates you. And obviously, you could read on all sorts of topics, but it exposes you to different thought processes or different ideas than you're currently aware of. And the more you can expose yourself, the more options you have. I mean, you're expanding your context and your perspective. And it's like if you're not constantly learning, then you're limited by your small perspective.
Right.
And we all see the world through a lens. That's what Stephen Covey said, and isnt and others. They've said we see the world not as it is, but as we are.
Mm.
So like that's why you're not the exact same person as you were 5 years ago, is because you don't see the world the same way. You've been exposed to totally different things. You're in a new situation. You've got new goals, and so it's like you don't see the world as it is, and in your future is going to see the world in a different way too. And so it's like you want to expand your perspective so you can actually pursue different and better things. Like your current goals are limited by what you're exposed to. So it's like why wouldn't you want to expose yourself to better things so you could actually pursue better things?
Right. Yeah, one of the biographies that really shaped my thinking and helped me like come up with my own values was Benjamin Franklin's autobio. It blew my mind. I read it in one day. Like
Isn't that awesome when you get to
yeah.
this? What led you on this path? Like, what got you into study and learning? Because I mean, obviously you're a musician and like, but what got you into like learning and like bigger concepts?
So I had a tough childhood, and I was a pretty depressed teenager. I was like a goth kid, and
In New
I
York, or where'd you grow up?
yeah, in Brooklyn, New York, right? And um I'd seen myself very lowly, right? I remember my brother just like over like he told like a friend of his or a group of friends, he's like older brother, like 2 years, and I looked up to him at the time, but he was like, oh, that's my half retarded brother. And so like I just sort of like I used to question myself. I'm like, am I half retarded? And it's like,
So you're
and
not. Are you close to your brother now or no?
um well, yeah, and I've got over all the things that that like he was like kind of a tough older brother to have, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But either way, I mean, I sort of I had like the way I kind of dealt with teenage years was yelling into a microphone, singing in Linkin Park, and and just basically early 2000s new metal and things like that, right? That kind of got me through those years. But I still sort of seen my life in a very kind of victim way, until I was into fixing. I was into like gaming, right? And
So was I, dude. So was
yeah,
I.
yeah, I know. You played WoW, right? That's another like. So I played that for a few years. My bass player played it for like 10 years. He was like a prominent guild leader. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
A lot of time gets sucked into that system, dude.
Dude, it's so crazy. Like I played that. I played Diablo for God knows how long. Diablo 2, right? Even 3. I even played the first one back when I was a kid. But the whole thing is like I had this. I used to build computers, gaming computers, right? And I've helped other people with it, and so I had this kind of cool idea with computers, at least, that I can like swap out a video card and change these parts and improve that and whatever. But I never seen myself that way, right? And when I read that, what happened was I was torrenting, right? I was like downloading torrents of like various things, and I just happened to see a bunch of ebooks pop up in these torrents, right? And one of the I was like, I wasn't into reading at all until like maybe 19. I just kind of this just one book that sort of caught me off. Like it was just some kind of novel that I read, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm into reading, right? Maybe I should find some cool book to read, right? And I think, yeah, I searched these ebooks, and that one popped out to me, the one I said before, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And I was like, what's that, right? So I started reading it, and it started to talk about like, oh, well, you can change every aspect of your life, and you've been programmed by society and by family and by all these things. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I kind of kept reading into it, and I took it seriously. And then I started to view my own life and me as a person, my body, my mind, everything, as I did with computers. I could swap out parts and upgrade this and that, and completely change, who I am fundamentally. And so I sort of took that on, um, and so and I started to take on these changes. And one thing that happened to me, well, I was teaching guitar from like 16, right? I started playing guitar, I started teaching it, and then once I started to digest these concepts, and then started to kind of take on changes in my life, change my body. I was a fat kid, right? And getting into fitness and all of that, I started realizing the benefits that it had to me as a musician, and how just being healthier sort of helped me with practicing, and with just even my image of myself, and how I just pursued the whole thing. And I started to impart that on my students, and they had results from it. And so then I sort of, that ballooned into this artist health coaching kind of thing, that I took on artists, and gave them this sort of different perspective where they can work on themselves and get healthier, and how that could affect their musicianship. And then that, eventually kind of came into being this show, where I interview people based on that kind of thing, right? So,
Dude, that's awesome, man. Yeah,
yeah.
your story is interesting to me because I was the older brother. Not I wasn't necessarily that rude to my younger brother. He's 2 years younger than me as well.
Hmm.
But I would say he was more charismatic than me, and more just naturally talented at anything we did. He was always just better than me and stuff, and I was
Mm.
jealous, and my friends all loved him, and so I would always kind of push him away. And obviously my family situation was rough,
Right.
as far as I even talk about it in the book, as far as my dad being a heavy drug addict and stuff like that. And it still impacts my younger brother. I mean, he's still deep in his own trauma. And
Mm.
so, you know, I've reframed it, and we've, spent a lot of time, but he's still stuck in it.
Mm. And how do you have you tried to like work with him, talk to him? Because that's
We
tough,
have,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I've talked to him a lot, obviously, and I think he's read a lot of this book, but he's still just deep in the vicious cycle of addiction, and he's still, in denial, essentially, where it's just like he's not, you need, all progress starts by telling the truth. You know what I mean? And you're as
Yeah.
sick as your secrets.
Yep.
So at some point or another, with trauma, you got to realize you need help. That's why I love the quote that trauma isn't what happens to you; it's what you hold inside in the
Mm.
absence of an empathetic witness. Right?
Right.
And so it's like you need to eventually realize that you can't do it through willpower. Like you need to just open up and get help. Like you know.
Yeah.
It's trying to do it by yourself that's been the thing that's keeping you stuck all along, you know. And I think that that's true of not just overcoming an addiction, but whatever next level you want to get to, whether it's music or whether it's business, like trying to do it all by yourself is the slowest way. You know, it's like,
Right.
why wouldn't you get other people's support, other people's help, tell people about your goals? I mean, that's one of the big things that, you know, I talk about in this book, which I think is crucial, is once you've defined your future self, you have to tell everyone about it.
Right.
Make that your new narrative, make that your new story. Like that takes courage. But if you told everyone in your life who you were trying to be, you don't need to pretend like you're that person now, because you're not. Like your future self is a different version of you. But if you start telling everyone about your goals, first off, you're going to feel more accountability to doing it. Second off, your relationships are going to be a lot more congruent and authentic. But it's just like, it puts you in a position where you're moving forward. You know, like rather than continuing to tell the story about who you are and just overly defining yourself, tell people who you want to be, you know, and that will compel you to start acting more, you know, more from the perspective of your future rather
Right.
than from the perspective of who you are today. And I think that that's a powerful thing, to start just telling people what your goals are. It's vulnerable, you know. It could be just as scary as telling people about your, you know, the ghosts in your closet. You know, like people really are afraid to be open and just radically explicit about their goals. But I think
Right.
when you do it, then all of a sudden you've got nothing to hide. You're just being honest
Right.
about who you want to be.
Right. I mean, but at the same time, it's like speak to people who would support you on those goals, right?
Of
Because
course.
because there are people who are kind of malicious on that and will sort of try to suck you back into who you were. It's like, no, you're not capable of that. And sometimes those people are very close, and that can, so
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to be weary. I think that
yeah,
yeah. And there's some people that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like this, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, it's not worth debating with them. But like for the most part, people should know what you're up to, because then you're not living a lie. You're just
right,
like, this is who I am. This is where I'm going. You know,
yeah,
I'm gonna be a musician, or I'm gonna be a writer, or I'm gonna do this. Like, and then you're working towards a future that people are observing you pursuing. You know,
right,
I remember when I first started writing, it was scary. You know, I mean, I remember when I was telling people I was going to be an author, and then all of a sudden I started putting out really terrible blog posts on Facebook. You know, and you know, people aren't paying as much attention to you as you think. But if you're telling people about what you're up to and they're watching from time to time, all of a sudden, like a few years goes by, and all of a sudden I publish a major book. You know, and they're like, oh, whoa, like I remember when you said you wanted to do this. Like, because time goes really fast if you're not doing anything with it.
mm,
You know, people will be inspired. Most people in your life will actually be inspired if you tell them about what you're trying to accomplish, even if it's not, if even if it's to some degree off into the distance, because
mm,
then they can actually somewhat watch you become that person.
right. I think that's the greatest thing you could do for others is to become the best version of yourself.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's the number one deathbed regret that people have on their deathbeds, you know, is that they didn't have the courage to be who they wanted to be, but they lived up to what they thought people expected them to be.
Right.
You
So, what we were saying just before is like, that you want to kind of like tell everyone what you're becoming, and it's exactly what I did with this show. Right before I launched it, I went to the NAMM Show, which is National Academy of Music Manufacturers. It's like the event for musicians of the year, right? It's the Comic-Con of the music industry, essentially, right?
really?
Yeah, it's really cool, right? You have to like be an insider to kind of even get in there, but I got myself in, and there's an after party for like maybe 6 p.m. to like 2 a.m. every night of the Thursday to Sunday of that show. So right basically after the convention's over, it's like everyone just hangs out there and people mingle, and you're just like hanging out with rock stars, right? And
Holy cow.
yeah, yeah, and so I went there. I I I figured out what my show is exactly about, and the very thing that I'm going to be focusing on, and what it really is. And then I sort of I practiced it constantly, so I can sort of on a dime to be able to 15-second like pitch it, right. And I declare to all these people who are, some of them are just my heroes, that like this is what I'm up to. I just try to create as much accountability as I can. It just like I
What
wouldn't get.
happened?
What happened is I had fire under my ass that I had to like actually deliver, right.
That's
And
exactly the point.
yeah, and I launched the show, and and I've been going since then. So it's like, but I feel like I've been talking about it for a while prior to that, but it wasn't until I sort of created that kind of like accountability and told people this is what I'm up to and this is the date of that it's launching and all of that, that I had to like really, just make it
I mean,
happen.
we call those forcing functions. I mean, you
Yep.
created social pressure by telling people what you were going to do. You created a deadline. I mean, all these things are forcing functions where you create a situation that forces you to be who you want to be. I mean,
Right.
that's how you want to shape your life is that you're always essentially forcing your own hand against your own, laziness or lack of judgment or subconscious, like just I love that. So what compelled you to do that, to tell all those people?
I knew that it would put a light a fire under me to actually do it. Right. I knew that I'm susceptible to pushing it off or to
We all are.
yeah. I just knew my own tendencies well enough to be like, no, I have to shove myself in a corner and just like make myself do it.
How has it changed you think? Like, and so you've been doing it for a year. When was that episode? Was that like a year and a half ago, or when was
It
that?
was about a year. I mean, like my first episode I launched at like March 1st, basically of last year.
I'm
Right.
wondering to what extent you feel like you've changed since that time.
I feel like that, well, for one, I wasn't confident about interviewing and any of that. I was like, man, I'm gonna be talking to some of my heroes here, and just like I'm either gonna look like a complete buffoon or I have to like make myself good at this.
Who are some of the people you've already interviewed that like you just freaking loved?
Well, I started the show with Neil Morse, which is like one of my favorite artists.
Dude, that's a great way to start with a bang, though, dude.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's a good sign of confidence and courage. Courage is how you build confidence. That's
right.
why stepping out of your comfort zone is so crucial.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, your personality gets small unless you're acting courageously, and that's how you become flexible and start having more options, so
right.
like the fact that you started with that level of a bang, tells me that the
Yeah,
goal is pretty huge. I mean, it tells me you have a huge future if that's your first attempt, dude. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, and just a week ago, I interviewed like one of my heroes, guitar players that I literally have been looking up to, that I have posters of. Just so, and he was over there like taking health advice from me, and so it was just quite oh yeah, chills even thinking about it, right? But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't push myself to that level, to be doing that.
Well, and what you're describing is what I call peak experiences in the
Mm-hmm.
book. Is that by having those peak experiences, it radically shatters your former assumptions. They're subconscious enhancing, and so like by having those experiences, it opens you to a totally new set of possibilities for yourself.
Oh yeah.
And the more regularly you can have those experiences, the less tight you'll hold how things once were, and you're like, holy cow, maybe if I'm having conversations with this guy and you're learning from him, like I mean, it just opens you up for what's possible to you. It builds your confidence, right?
Right, right, right. It's just another tool for that exponential growth, instead of like, tippy toeing, like
And
you
you can
can,
create
yeah.
those experiences.
Right, right.
I
And
mean, why wouldn't anyone want to create those experiences that just up them? I mean, you with those chills, you know what I mean, with that guy. Why
yeah,
wouldn't you want more and more of that?
yeah. There's a lot of people kind of living very small, right? And, on some level, it's just like, okay, if you want to just kind of live in this kind of basic way, sure, do you. But if you live once, you have an opportunity here. It's like, why not make something great of it, right? If you've ever had a desire to do something, why not, just figure out how to get it done, right? And have that experience and take that with you. And like you said, on your deathbed, the top regrets, it's going to be the things you haven't done and the things that you haven't tried, you know? So,
Yeah, I mean, the
hmm
big thing that honestly, the big thing that stops people is uncertainty. Our brains literally are shaped, or they're designed to form memories so that we can predict our behavior. And
hmm
so like we like our lives to be predictable. We like things to be stable and consistent. And like to deal with uncertainty, unless you become really flexible, you can become
hmm
flexible and begin to like really thrive on it. I mean, there's a good quote that when nothing is certain, everything is possible. But like if everything is certain, if you need everything to be certain, then you're probably not willing to take any risks or make or to make decisions. You can't actually make a decision without some form of uncertainty. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have that's the requirement if you want to make change is you got to deal with uncertainty and then you've got to learn from it. And it no matter where you get, you'll still have to keep dealing with that. There's always stuff outside your current sphere and comfort zone. And so like that's where the evolution happens, you know.
Right.
That's where the peak experiences happen. That's where your perspective changes. That's where you become more flexible and confident as a human being.
Right.
And when you have more confidence, you've got more options.
Right. 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 One of the quotes you put here, like, is from Napoleon Hill: "Desire is the starting point to all achievements." Right. And that's very true. You know, like one of my early books, of course, was
Think and Grow
yeah,
Rich.
Think and Grow Rich.
Such a
Right.
classic, man.
Oh yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah. I love the story it opens with.
The
That
Edison story?
yeah.
Was it Edison?
No, I think it was the 6 feet from gold.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. At,
Yeah, I got to go back and re-listen to that book. I mean, I've probably gone through it 10 times, but it's been like at least a year or two.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Good
But
books.
that
You
book
gotta just keep
always
listening.
opens me up, man. That book always makes me realize I need to get back to the drawing board and get running towards it. I mean, I think you get to a point. I think the purpose of all of this is that, and I think there's a crucial thing for people to understand is that your personality is how you consistently show up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's what you prefer right now, and what you prefer today is not what you preferred in the past. But if you're really serious about transforming yourself, then your future self, they have different preferences, and you
Mm-hmm.
need to start acting towards those preferences and start being courageous. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and start and once you realize this, and once you start building small doses of confidence, you realize that there's so many things you can do. Like the world becomes your oyster because you're no longer limited by a small, narrow amount of emotions that you're willing to handle. You know, like you begin to ride the wave, and you also begin to seek help, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and seek learning. And so it's just life becomes a lot more fun when you've got more, when you're less limited, you know, and it's really just a story in your head. I mean, I would say everyone who's listening to this, we're all at some glass ceiling in our mind as far as who we can be and what we can accomplish. And, you know, you've got to be courageous to shatter that ceiling.
Yeah. One thing that you've mentioned a few times in this interview and in your book is, like, other people, and how, you're not going to go at this alone, right? If you want to achieve anything great, you're going to have a team. You're going to have you need to kind of employ others, and to help you on that vision and to scale.
Yeah, I mean, now you got to employ others and you got to have transformational experiences. I mean, there's a whole theory around this. There's a guy named Robert Keegan.
Mm-hmm.
This is some good stuff, but like Robert Keegan, he's been at Harvard for a long time and he
Mm-hmm.
studied individual and organizational development. And basically, he breaks people up into three levels. Like the lowest level of basically personal development, you could call it, is what he calls the socializing self, where basically you're just dependent. You don't have your own goals. You're just like literally relying on others. Like you're just trying to fit in with others. You're afraid of what people think, and so you're just trying to do what makes you like fit in and like look cool.
Right.
You're just highly dependent. You don't even have like an identity except for just to fit in. The next level up, which is really where most people stop, which is what Stephen Covey called independence, but it's basically like he calls it the authoring self stage, where basically you've got your goals, your perspectives. You have a mental filter, but you can't even see outside of it. Like you think that your perspective is reality rather than just your view of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everything you do is transactional. It's just to accomplish your goals. Like you're getting in relationships, and if it's just transactional. But the highest level is what he calls the transforming self stage. And that's basically where you enter relationships so that you can both transform each other. It's a lot more collaborative, a lot more relational. You have your own goals and agenda, but through creative like collaborations and stuff, your own perspectives get shattered all the time.
Right.
And through the relationships, you go places that you could never do on your own or go on your own. And that's why relationships are so crucial. I mean, basically what they say is they say the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Because through relationships, you can let go of former sides of yourself.
Mm. Right. One thing you alluded to there was, entering into a relationship, and this is one of the notes I took, where it's not. Well, how did you put it exactly here? Um, well, marry for aligned purpose and not personality.
What did you
Yeah,
think of that?
I love that. I love that. And that's, it's funny. That's one thing I I've talked to women with about in the past, and my own partner, just because like people think that, okay, either like you're a match or you're not a match, and that's and I think it's so
Well, it's
silly.
very much the view that you're not going to change,
Right,
right?
right. I view it like a starting point, right? It's just like, well, you want like maybe a 65, at least 70% maybe starting point, so you can tolerate the person at first, and then you grow with them, and then
Yes.
with time you grow together. It's like, if I told this to a student of mine who was just like broke up with their girlfriend. It's like, oh, I don't know, we don't have much in common, right? And it's like, well, what are your goals? Like, what do you have a common vision in common right now? If like I told them, like, imagine yourself in 10 years if you were with the same person, how much in common you would have, because you would have like a big portion of your life together, and that's in common, right? And who you are is is collective of that, and so like people trying to make a match with somebody, it's really about the common vision, that if they both on one growth trajectory, like most relationships I've been in, or all relationships I've been in besides the one I'm in right now, failed not because they well, it's really because I was on a growth trajectory and they weren't, and then
Yeah.
this is where it started and this is where it ended.
Well, but you also knew that your future self with them was incredibly limited. And so
Right,
you didn't really like who your future self was with that person,
right.
right? And it's like I remember dating all sorts of excellent girls. I mean, when I was in college, I mean, on paper it's like these girls are amazing and there's no reason for me not to say yes. But when I met my wife, the person I married, I just realized if I marry this person, my future is unlimited. And like
Mm,
obviously like just because I just could tell that we wanted to go similar places. What's
mm,
interesting is when you're driven by a vision or a purpose, typically how people view personality is it's based on pain and pleasure. Like you pursue what's pleasurable, you avoid what's difficult, you avoid what's unnatural. You stick with your strengths. But when you're driven by like a vision or a purpose, then you're willing to do essentially whatever is required to achieve the purpose. You're willing to like do stuff that's unnatural or uncomfortable. You're willing
mm-hmm.
to, and when the why is strong enough, you'll do whatever is required. So it's not even about pain or pleasure when you're driven by a purpose. And I think Viktor Frankl talks really beautifully about this. He's like, happiness and success are about, being a part of a cause or giving yourself to someone outside of yourself. And so like, just as an example, my wife and I, we became foster parents of 3 kids. That was not my desire. That was my
Mm,
wife's desire, but it was our shared purpose, And so like I was fine doing it, even though I wouldn't have chosen it if I wasn't in the relationship.
mm-hmm.
But because we were a team, I do things all the time that I wouldn't choose for myself. And I'm always the beneficiary. I'm always transformed and vice versa, like because we're a team, she does a lot of things for me that she wouldn't choose to do, but because our vision's going the same way, like we totally support each other on that stuff. And as a result, we both move forward and we both change a lot. If we hadn't done the foster care thing, I would have been more narrow in who I am today. I'd be less flexible because I probably wouldn't have done something so outside my comfort zone or outside of my frame of reference. But it was something that she'd been wanting to do for a while. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. Like we want to have kids anyways, and we've got a vision for our future. It took at least a year for me to adjust to that, dude.
Mm,
Like having 3 kids that were foster kids, like while I was in my PhD program, it admittedly I had to train myself to want to be their dad. Like in the
mm,
beginning, because you have preferences and desires, but your future self has different preferences and desires. My future self was someone who freaking loved the kids and was an amazing dad. But me, 3 or 4 years ago was like, I don't want to come home from school. Like it's a mess there and stuff. And so like you need to invest in your future self and do what they would have you do. I mean, even just 2 days ago when I came home from work, my 8-year-old son wanted to swim because we got a pool in our backyard in Florida, and he's like, Dad, let's swim. I want to swim, and like I was fried, and I'm like, I'll just watch you, like I'll just sit on the freaking chair and watch you. And then I was thinking, what would my future self say to me? You know what I mean? Like,
mm.
how would they want to remember this experience? you know, and it was just like, freak, I gotta go jump in the pool. You know what I mean? Like, who cares what I feel right now? I want to be that person who looks
I
back
love
on this
that.
powerfully, but also like the more you act like that, the more just flexible you become. You know, like it's easy just to like let the current moment dictate your situation, and that's bad decision making.
Right. I love that reframe, just like in the present.
Yeah,
You,
yeah, you all, yeah, no, you can use that all the time. What would my future self do? You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it really clarifies the right choice.
That's
You know, it's
interesting.
like, you know,
I've heard of the like using like say some figures as like having on your shoulder, maybe like what would Benjamin Franklin do, or what would said figure that I look up to do, right? But like if you frame your future self based on whoever, right, or based on all your goals, and
think
then
about if you had both things on one shoulder. What would your former self do, and what would your future self do, dude?
yeah. No, I love it. I love it. That's really good, and it's a great way to just really constantly step into your future self, right? And again, to just move exponentially forward, right? And it's the things that we do every day. It's those tiny little actions, because those actions are going to lead to more actions, and just constantly move you forward.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in psychology we call it self-signaling, but your
Right.
behavior signals back to the person you are. So like if I sat there and watched my son play,
Hmm.
then that behavior would signal back to me that I'm someone who just watches my son play, you
Right.
know? But by jumping in, I was sending a powerful message to myself that no, this is the type of person I am. I mean, think about how different people's lives would be and how fast we'd progress if we did that throughout the day, if we just acted towards the vision. Like, you know, in every situation we were in, like, holy cow, we'd be so uninhibited.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's super powerful. That's super powerful, man.
And it's practice, you know, you practice it. It's called deliberate practice for a purpose. You know, if you're not perfect, you're never going to arrive. You know, like today's practice, how many times can you do it today? You know, if you do it, you'll become more flexible and confident and you'll have made progress today. Whereas, you know, sadly, most people are on autopilot most of the day, you know, so it's like, it's practice. You don't have to overthink it, you know, like, but every time you do it, it's a freaking win,
right.
something to be celebrated.
True. 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 Um, one thing that you mentioned in the book is, and this is a common theme in self development, the whole tithing thing, right? And giving
Oh,
to
yes.
charity,
This is
right?
huge, dude.
Yeah, but the like it's mind blowing way you put it. It's like don't tithe as like your current income, but your future income, right?
Yeah, then it becomes rather than being a cost, it becomes an investment,
mm,
right?
yeah, right.
Like a lot of people, I think they view like tithing or
Mm-hmm.
donations as like a cost, you know. But if you do it as an investment, then all of a sudden, rather than paying 10% of what you've made, you're paying, you know, you're paying 10% of what you want to make,
Right,
right? And so all of a sudden, rather than being past focused, it's future focused. Like rather than paying, you know, if you make 100 grand, rather than paying $10,000, you know what I mean? You make bigger investments. You pay 20 grand so that in the future you can make 200 grand, you know?
right,
Like,
right.
it's just, I mean, it works, dude. I'm telling you, I started doing this because I read that story that I put in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of donating and giving charitable stuff because of what it does to your subconscious. And there's interesting science on it, honestly. Like a lot of research about what it does for your well-being and your sense of self and your sense of confidence. But I heard that story back like in I think the beginning of 2016 or 2017. I must have been 2016. First time I heard that story, and we had some money in the bank, not a ton. You know, I was in graduate school, but I'm like, I want to donate this, Lauren, to my wife, and she's like, "What are you doing?" You know, like our expenses were pretty low because we were, grad students, and so like I paid like 12, 13 grand. You know, and this was like before I was making money, even with blogging and stuff, and like the next year I got my book deal for Willpower Doesn't Work, which was a few $100,000. And like I just kept, doing that principle and it's just like it really like ups you, dude. It's just like to me, I think it's a spiritual principle, but I also think it's a psychological principle. You know, I call it the psychological upgrade, because you're literally sending a pretty insane message to your subconscious essentially that like this is who I'm going to be. Like, this is what I believe is going to happen, and like, I'm going to step into this and I'm going to grow into this rather than, I just think it works, dude. It's interesting.
Right. That's pretty awesome. You mentioned one thing in your book about being in the gap, right? Like basically people were in a gap focusing on like what's wrong rather than, just seeing the whole picture.
Mhm.
Talk on that
Yeah.
a little
So
bit.
yeah, I'll share that. Like this came from Dan Sullivan, but like either you're in the gap or you're in the gain,
Hmm.
right? And so like let's just say as an example, I'm driving home from work today, and I decide out of the goodness of my heart to go and get my daughter a treat, and so I buy her something, and I take it to her, and as soon as I get home, she says, "Oh, you didn't get my favorite one." Like
Mm.
all of a sudden, she didn't realize that she just gained something. Instead, she's focusing on the gap. She's focusing on what's missing, what's wrong. And so this is just
Mm.
about framing. It's what you focus on expands,
Hmm.
and so like you can be in the gap in any situation. Like recently, as an example, there are some people who live near us who are really cool neighbors, and they've got a bunch of kids who like are my boys' age, and our kids just love playing over there. And they've got this huge yard. And anyways, they invited our kids. This was before the quarantine, but they invited our kids over to come and do yard work. And in yard work for these people is different. Like they've got a huge yard slack line. Like they were saying, like we're gonna use axes and like we're gonna chop down trees and
Oh
stuff.
my God.
And my kids love all that because like they're just into that stuff. And so
Hmm.
I'm like, all right, you guys want to do this for your Saturday instead of having to do chores and stuff?
Hmm.
And they're like, yeah, let's do it. They love playing with the Morrisons. And so they had all day, they ate pizza and they were just doing all day. Just, if they were at home, they would have done chores and we would have done stuff. But it's like they had this epic day. And while I'm driving home with them, 5-minute drive, I'm just like, tell me about the Morrisons. Tell me about your day. And like they started off talking about how great it was, but then one of them just made one small complaint, and I was just like, well,
Mm.
yeah, but like it did get boring after a while, or like, and then they started feeding off each other, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And I was like, wait a minute, boys, like first off, you're literally framing your memory right now. Like, do you want to choose to remember this as a bad day? Because this is what you're doing right now. You're
Mm.
forming a narrative and an explanation. Like, do you want today to literally be framed as a negative day? Like, do you want to remember the Morrisons as it was a bad day? They're like, no. I'm like, well, that's what you're doing right now, right? They're focusing on the gap, right? They're focusing on the one or two things that maybe were not ideal versus all the amazing things that happened in that day. And so I think the
Mm.
really cool concept here, and it's something I've applied and something I've learned is, you can do it on a daily basis. Just an example, like what were a few things that went well today?
Hmm.
I like doing it on like a monthly and on a 90-day basis where I think about what are like the wins from the last 90 days? Like what are the things that I've seen happen? Because this trains you to then see progress. Like if you think about all the things what are all the good things that have happened personally and professionally in the last 90 days, just think about it in your head right now. Like and it's kind of hard unless you're like literally sitting down with a journal. But like there's actually probably a lot of things that have happened in the last 90 days that you may just brush off. But if you actually take the time to think about it, you're like, holy cow, a lot's actually happened. And you just start to realize that good stuff's happening all the time and you can choose to focus on that. And this is a part of reframing as well, like
Hmm.
as far as like thinking about the gains that happen from traumatic experiences. Like if you're focused on the what happened to you, yeah, something probably bad happened, like you got in a car accident or something bad, you got dumped, whatever it was, like whatever the situation is. But you can also think about what are the gains that occurred as a result, like what are the benefits from this? Michael
Hmm.
Hyatt, I heard this as a quote, but he basically said, what does this now make possible? Like, COVID, you lose your job to COVID-19. What does this now make possible? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like you can focus on either the gains or the gaps,
Right.
and it's literally your choice. There's no objective reality. You don't view any situation as it is, but as you are. And so if you start viewing the past as it happened for you, it opens up a lot more for you. You're no longer the victim.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. A few years ago, I started doing this reframing thing as a practice where I
It's freaking
literally,
amazing, dude.
yeah, I did these walks, right? So I walked in the morning just to kind of, just to get the cardio going and just to move, right? Because physically moving is important for the mind, right?
It really is.
Yeah, that can't be understated. Um, and as I would walk out, I would first I would do walking outward, say, I don't know, a few blocks or maybe 15 minutes outward. If I was to walk 30 minutes, I'd walk 15 minutes outward and I would think about gratitude. I'd just kind of focus on being grateful. Or rather, I would do that on the way back. On the way to, on the way out, I would actually think about what's going wrong and then I would reframe it, right? and just kind of like see everything that I'm viewing negatively, and just kind of let it come to me, and just like, how can I view this in a positive way? How is this happening for me, right? Not to me, right? And then on the way back, I would just think about what I'm grateful for, and then it's just powerful.
You know what's interesting about this is they say that gratitude is the mother of all virtues
Mm,
because when you're feeling gratitude, you feel hopeful. And
right.
literally you can't have motivation without hope. Like you can't have motivation towards something if you don't have hope or belief that it could happen. You know, so hope is really important, but usually gratitude is the thing that makes you feel hopeful about things. Like you choose to be grateful, you choose to look at situations from a better perspective, and you choose to feel great, and then all of a sudden you've got enhanced hope that things are going to be okay, that things can work out, and that literally can fuel your motivation. You know, like you're not going to be motivated if you don't think things can change.
Yeah.
You know, so hope, so hope's really important, but I think gratitude, is something that can really fuel your hope and your faith or your belief that things can be different. And so I love that, dude. And I think that's something that people could practice and should practice,
Right.
is just the art of reframing, and that we call that, um, you know, we call it emotional regulation in psychology, but it's literally choosing how you frame a situation or an experience. Like, how do you want to see this, or how would your future self see this? How would Benjamin Franklin see this? It's just like literally just choosing to see things from different angles and realizing you're only seeing it from one view. You're focused, and that's really the same way with the past. If something negative happened to you, you're just seeing it from one view. And so, like, if you're limited by the current view that you're seeing it from, get a new view.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can choose that. You can get better and better at framing situations and experiences in different ways.
Yeah. No, even in that period where I did that on a daily basis, it completely helped me, right? It helped me like reframe a lot of the things of the past, and you know remove the chains that held me to that, and sort of freed
Have
me
you
up.
ever read
Hmm.
the book? Have you ever read the small book As a Man Thinketh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that book's crucial because it's like it talks about how the pervasive thoughts literally dictate your circumstances, your character. Like, and so it's like if you can choose. I think this is why future self as a concept is so crucial to keep in mind, is because it's like if you're thinking from the perspective of your future self, you're probably becoming that version of yourself. But also, if you train yourself to have positive views and just more enhanced views of anything, that literally shapes how you experience things. And so I think this is why daily journaling and just, you know, basically focusing on what you're wanting in life and focusing on the positive allows you to create so much better situations in your life. It allows you to act from that perspective, which then obviously is inconsistent potentially with limiting and former views of yourself. It's powerful. It's powerful, especially when you're measuring the gain, like on a 90-day basis. Like you measure, holy cow, in the last 90 days, like this is actually what happened. Like that snapshot of what occurred in the last 90 days is fundamentally different from things that I was doing 3 years ago. And then you can
Right.
realize, wow, like big change is actually occurring. And I think that that's good for confidence.
Definitely. Dude, another practice that you alluded to in the book, which kind of came at me, I was shocked to see in the book, and glad to see, is that you mentioned fasting, right?
Yep.
And dude, I've been fasting for years, right? And I first got into it through like intermittent fasting, and before that even became trendy, I sort of like because I was in like the bodybuilding community. That's where it sort of arrived first, and then I sort of made it to the mainstream eventually.
Yeah.
But then less so in the mainstream is like alternate day fasting, or multi-day, or dry fasting, and all these like different variants. And I've messed around with virtually every type of fasting like this. I did a 6-day fast in January, and 2-day dry fast. And you mentioned in your book that
How was that,
oh,
dude?
it's awesome.
How's the 6 day?
Oh, 6 day was, dude, I feel like I've actually metabolically reset my body, which is insane. So, um, I mentioned I was like a fat kid as a teenager, right? And I could just eat a little bit and gain weight, right? And I feel like that I've always had to sort of combat that. And I feel like that's kind of like gotten slightly worse from like 25 on to like I'm like 33 now. Um, but in January, after I did that, I felt like I had the best metabolic flexibility that I've ever had in my life, right? I'm not giving medical advice,
Well,
but
no, wait, how was your fast? Was it just water for 6 days, or what'd you do?
yeah, it was
Did
water
you
with
like do juice or
electrolytes.
broth or what?
No,
Oh,
no,
water with.
yeah. So it was just water with added potassium, magnesium, and just basically water with sea salt, with pink sea salt, right? Himalayan salt. And so that kind of put the electrolytes in. I even worked out. I was able to work out, not to failure, right? Because you don't want that can become catabolic, right? But the idea was like it was just, it was an amazing reset. I would have gone like 7 or even 10 days or something like that, but I had this like weekly dinner with family. I just wanted to kind of like fast until then, right? So that was like a 6 day kind of thing. But anyone who's listening to this, like consult with your doctor, all those things. I'm not trying to play like a nutritionist here, but and do your own research. But it's something that I think it fundamentally changed my metabolic state, because after that point, I didn't easily put on weight. I could have went a weekend, where I just ate like crazy and stuff, and it didn't have much of an effect on me. I felt like I completely changed the way my body processes food. Um,
I
that
believe that, dude.
Yeah, and then I did a 2 day dry fast, um, and that was an extreme one where I was just kind of pushing
So
the
that is
yeah.
that 2 days where you don't do anything? You don't put anything in your body?
Yeah, yeah, no water or nothing, right? Like you were saying in the book, like you like once or twice a month you do a dry fast for a day,
I
right?
usually do dry fast for like, 18 to 24 hours, usually twice a month.
Yeah, that's great. That's honestly, from the research I've done on that, it the like you do a lot of great repair in the body. You cause a lot of positive metabolic stress, and
Yeah, man.
have you done the research on it, or you just kind of did it intuitively?
No, no, I've done lots of research on it, man. I've been doing it for well over a decade. For both spiritual and also physical and mental reasons.
Hmm.
So, yeah, totally.
I think it's one of those things that like people should do, like generally. I feel like it's something that we did do and then sort of lost track of because of the availability of food and all of that. That we have nowadays, that we sort of forgot that some fasting is not only a good thing to do, but something that we probably would have done regularly prehistorically. Like, it's probably something that was a mechanism for our body to heal, and
Think
we
about what it does
lost.
to your psychological flexibility, though. I mean, think about how much more flexible you can become if you can deal with not eating for a while. I mean, if it, like a lot of, again, people are just so constrained by what's comfortable, what's
Hmm.
immediate gratification. And so, like, I think it's a really good mind expander too.
Hmm.
Like you can get better. I'm sure your two fasts that you've already referenced did a lot of things for your mindset and
Oh
other
yeah.
things like that. I guarantee your clarity, your perspective, your decision making, all of those things enhanced
Hmm.
because of this.
Yeah, I like, it's a regular practice for me. Those just happen to be two kind of like larger, more extreme, but like, I try to get a fast day on a weekly basis. Although I've slacked on that in the past few weeks, so. But that the idea
I guess
is.
you're gonna have to do one soon.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny because I was like kind of like thinking about doing one today, right? Maybe, but no, I already had like the bulletproof thing, so I had fats. So I mean, I could do like a bulletproof fast if that, yeah, that's a thing too. So I didn't take in any carbs, so
You could do it some other time
so
soon when you feel excited about it.
definitely, definitely. But that the whole thing is like, yes, it's a great thing for the mind. It's a great thing for the mind, and it's an amazing thing for the body.
Yeah, I mean, and I wrote that section in the chapter on the subconscious
Mm.
because the subconscious is really your body. And so like that fasting was obviously like one of the most powerful things you can do to your physical body to reset your subconscious,
Hmm.
and there's obviously a lot of research on how fasting can help you overcome addictions and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And so like obviously an addiction is an aspect of your personality. And so fasting is actually a really powerful, profound way to not only get clear on your future self, but to then like align yourself behaviorally and even physically with your future self. And so, it's a really great way to reset your subconscious and just, reset the system.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is like on a fast, doing like work while you're fasting. Um, there's something about I think this is just presumptive a little bit, but I think that the mind is in this prehistoric state of like where you would be looking for food, and so you're just hyper aware and alert, and so you could use that to sort of like fuel your work,
You
and just
totally can. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I when I'm doing podcasts as an example or writing when I'm in a fasted state, I usually do pretty dang well.
yeah.
I'm a lot like more cognitively clear and whatnot and just sharper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I've even talked to students about doing fasted practice, like guitar practice and things
That
like
makes
that.
sense. Makes sense, dude.
Yeah, because they
I think
stay
it'd be great for
focused.
your memory and your brain.
Because the opposite of that is terrible. Like if they just ate, like especially a carb laden meal, before sitting down to practice, they're just like so distracted, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's an important aspect of things. Just how you eat and how that will drive your state of mind. And just eating clean and how that will just eating in a certain way just to avoid hyper stimulating foods, right? Because they can sort of take you over the edge, as far as maybe making you too tired or overstimulated or something for the activity that you're up to. Like a common topic on here is like what people eat before they go out on stage, or
So what are some of the things that people typically eat before they go out?
what I hear the most is that it's just a light meal and kind of not too close to being out there because you don't want to be dragged down. You want to sort of have the ability to sort of to jump around on stage without feeling like an upset stomach kind of thing, and just kind of withholding eating till after. But then that kind of comes with other challenges of like the show is really late, and then you're eating really late, and then the options are pizza and like and other things, and so there's challenges there for sure. But there was an interesting thing as far as like diet and food and even drugs and alcohol and stuff that happen on tour for musicians, because that's a very particular
Yeah.
environment. I mean, I think
Oh yeah.
it's applicable to anyone who's on a very tight traveling schedule, where they're constantly in motion. They can make unhealthy choices constantly, and then so you really have to have like these strict guidelines that you go by, and some people stick to like maybe a vegetarian kind of diet or vegan or something, or some people go and they keep the carbs low, but you need to have some kind of guiding principle. But I feel like what's more important is that they're tracking something, right? Because the tracking itself is going to keep them aware.
Aware.
Yeah, it's going to keep them aware of what they're doing, right? If you're not tracking something, then you could just be eating unconsciously, and that can slip into other things, right? So I think tracking is the most important thing. I tell people, look, people who are just really new to like dieting or anything like that, it's like don't even try to change anything. Just start to like write down what you eat or take photos, and or use this app like MyFitnessPal or something like that, and then just start to just track your food. All right, and just by doing that, you're just going to be aware, and you're going to, if you have to write down everything that goes in your mouth, it's going to be a very different you're not going to go and just like nibble on these little pieces of popcorn or whatever that's sitting around.
Tracking is awesome, dude.
Yeah,
I'm a huge believer in it. It's
yeah,
good to track. I mean, if you're not tracking it, you're probably not improving it rapidly.
right.
I mean, once you're serious about something, once you start tracking it, like, and I think that you're tracking things because you want to improve them naturally. And so, yeah, I think tracking is essential to anyone who's wanting to make a specific change.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the stuff you mentioned in your book, if you're trying to make these profound changes in your life, and yeah, tracking is definitely an important thing. Do you have a sort of like what does your schedule look like? I'm just curious. How do you
Yeah, yeah,
structure
yeah.
that?
So like, I have like an office about 15 minutes from my house, and so I'll wake up usually 5, come here, right now because I'm like for the last 2 years I've been writing books and finishing my PhD, so I've kind of been in the cave, but now I'm done with both of those books, the Dan Sullivan one and Personality, And so I'm out of the cave now. I'm having conversations like this. I'm getting back into blogging, so my schedule's a little different now.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, it was just like writing all day and a lot of trying not to distract myself, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like work out in the middle of the day. I had a lot more time. Now I'm like very regimented. I'm doing podcasts and like I'm writing blog posts. So I'll wake up at like, usually my work day is between 5 and like 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'll wake and included in that is usually like a walk or a workout if the gym's open, which it's not right now, but like, so I'll take time to journal and like, listen to a book and exercise in the midst of all that. But right now it's doing interviews and having conversations with people, and before 8 a.m. doing my journaling, my fitness, and writing blog posts, dude. And then just by 3 o'clock at the absolute latest, I go home, dude, and just freaking play with my kids, help my wife make dinner. We do our evening routine, put our kids down by 8, and then my wife and I chill for like an hour and go to bed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very regimented right now. It's very chill. COVID-19 doesn't impact us at all. Like our kids are totally like self-organized, like I love the quote, teach them correct principles and let them govern themselves. You know what I
Mm.
mean? That's a freaking cool quote, like teach correct principles, let them govern themselves. And so like they have their own rules and things like that. And like, obviously it's not a perfect environment, but our situation's not that hampered, honestly, by the situation, even with 5 kids at home. Like I get texts all the time, are you pulling your hair out and stuff? I mean, I'm kind of gone a lot of the day, and then I go home and just play with them. We got a tennis court in our neighborhood and stuff, and so the kids have been playing a lot of tennis. I'm actually going to get a tennis racket because the kids are really into tennis right now, and I'm going to try to invest in that for myself just so that I can be involved in what they're interested in.
Well, that's cool that they let you go there right now. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's an outdoor tennis court, you know what I mean?
I mean, some places are closing parks, so it's like,
I know yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's true, dude.
it's wild. But one thing that I've been hearing frequently now is like, you know, you have a place that you go to do work, and then you come back. Like you go to work.
Yeah, I go to an environment. I mean, I even, even if I'm just not even gonna go to work one day, I go to a place to even do my morning routine, my journaling, my visualization on like a Saturday or a Sunday when I'm not gonna go work. Like I'll go to my car and drive even to like a different road in my neighborhood, or I'll drive to a parking lot even at like 5, 6 in the morning, just so that I can be in a different space.
Hmm.
Because it's really good for your mindset to get into a different environment that's kind of more focused on an activity.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's the that let's focus on that a little bit because like environment's really important, and if you do everything, like if you sleep in the same place that you work, in the same place that you do other things, it's just like it's so easy to get distracted. But if you have a particular place you do a specific work in, like the last interview I had, he had a studio that he traveled to, and that's where he did his music and stuff like that. Not just like in a room in his house. He had a particular place, right? And even if it is a place in your home that you just
Yeah,
kind
it
of
could just be, yeah, it could
you
be a
got
room.
you got to make it holy. You got to
Yep,
like just like distinguish it like as like this is what I do here and that's it. You know.
totally. Yeah, yeah. It really allows you to get into the mindset of what you're trying to do, rather than, yeah. I mean, if you have too many purposes for a single environment, then you're gonna have a hard time transitioning from activities.
Yeah, because like there's this thing where you go to a particular place and it triggers like certain parts of your
Yep,
mind, right?
totally. Brings you right there. I mean, when I get in my car, I mean, I already start getting ideas, and then I open up my journal and just bang, because the environment associates to that.
Mm-hmm. So you just
And I
kind of.
actually have a hard time journaling here in my house because this environment's so used to like writing and like doing podcasts and things like this that when I come here and I'm trying to journal, I get all distracted and I want to just start working.
Right. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. I like that just to kind of have an environment for different things, right? Like I hear like a bedroom should just be for sleeping and sex, right? So
Yeah, dude.
yeah, just
Otherwise, you're not going to sleep as well
right, right.
because you're going to go in there and your brain's going to start associating it with different activities. So it's like, no, you want to go in there and have your brain prepare for bed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's huge. Just really distinguishing like places for specific things and not intermingling in that kind of
Yeah.
way. Yeah. Um, Man, there's so much that we could touch on.
I think we've covered the gamut, but
Yeah.
freaking, I'm glad you liked the book, dude.
Dude, it's an amazing book, and I wish you great luck with it, and I'm gonna recommend it. It it sucks that it comes out all the way in June because I'd love to gift it sooner than June. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
saying?
this is what the cover looks like. It's got like a pen. It's kind of a folded up edition, but you got like the pencil and the shavings.
Yes.
Um, 'cause you got to rewrite the story. But yeah, I think it'll. One of the things in the book is obviously that it's got about 150 journal prompts throughout it. And so
Yeah.
hopefully to help jog people for reframing the experiences and visualizing their future ones. And so, yeah, man,
Definitely.
thanks for letting me be on your show and for the freaking fun conversation, dude. It's been a
Dude,
pleasure.
pleasure's all mine, man. Where can people find you online?
BenjaminHardy.com is where people can find me. And yeah, there's blogs there. Just for anyone who does buy this book, there's going to be 3 free online courses. There's a course that goes way deep into the book itself. And then there's a journaling course, which actually over 10,000 people have purchased at this point. Deep dive journaling course. You get all these things for free. Also a blogging course, which is where I've, talked about all my blogging strategies. But those are all free for anyone who buys the book. But anyways, the book itself is what matters most, and you can get that wherever you want.
Awesome. All right, Ben. It's been a pleasure.
Dude, you're awesome, brother. What a true pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine, dude.
See you, man.
All right. See you soon.